data destruction and why it's so important. And in cases, especially if you are a relatively large office, the amount of time it would take for one of your employees to shred a box of documents compared to hiring a professional service that can do it in about a minute. Think about paying someone to stand over something and that's all they're doing for 2 hours versus what you might have hired them to do. Just from that standpoint alone is a good reason to hire confidential data destruction. But let's talk also with Steve Sturgeon. Welcome back. We are talking also about laws and regulations. We touched on that a little bit. Red flag rules, HIPAA, and things like that. But it's not just like, okay, we're doing it because we need to make sure we are protecting our clients' security and also our own stuff. But especially as a business, there are compliance regulations based on a certain number of employees that you have in your organization that can come with hefty penalties, right?
Yes, the red flag rule that was implemented about a year and a half ago by the federal government says that any company of 3 employees or greater must have procedures in place that identify and specify what kind of information a company captures, how long they keep it, who looks at it and has control of it while it's in their possession, and how do they get rid of it? And we're the how do you get rid of it part of it for companies like that.
Exactly. I mean, things like old job interview applications with plenty, chock full of personal information that can easily be exploited. And also, we had touched in a previous interview about medical information, HIPAA laws that are important, especially protecting the client's confidential medical information, because someone can really, if it gets in the wrong hands, that could be exploited in so many ways.
Well, these days, companies do employee verifications. They do background checks. All that information comes out on paper, typically, in some form, or is reviewed on paper in some form and needs to be disposed of.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit. We talked a lot about paper destruction. Let's talk a little bit about electronic destruction. You're talking about hard drives. You also do CDs and laptop hard drives and everything else, correct?
Yes, CDs, DVDs, VHS tapes, all forms of tape devices, anything that has electronic media on it or data stored on the electronic media, we destroy. It goes through the same shredding process that paper does. It goes through separately, but it reduces the material, whatever it may be, to about 1/2 an inch by 3/8 of an inch.
I've seen I've been at events where I've seen the video. I mean, you've got actually a camera that shows it being destroyed. It's kind of cool, especially to crunch up all that stuff. Your website, give me the website address real quick.
ShredderOnSite.com. That's ONSITE.
And it's really cool because not only, of course, it has your services, it's a great website, but also a blog about different things, kind of like what we talked about regarding the confidentiality of your information, regulations, things like I was just checking it out. The one about recycling the paper that's been shredded. How do you do that and how do you do it properly? So it's a great place to go for a lot of information. I want to talk a little bit too. We touched on this before. We talked about the red flag rule. Let's elaborate on that a little bit more.
Well, I just mentioned the process that's required, okay, and the rules that are specified in terms of what a company does or what a business does with information. So that has to be documented on paper. The employees have to sign from their standpoint the procedures so that they know what they're responsible for, such that if there was ever enforcement that came in or if there was a data breach, that the company can actually represent and demonstrate that they have the policy in place and they have either a service or they have a mechanism that they destroy the data.
Because believe me, if there is some sort of data breach and they start investigating, they will come to you and most likely ask. And so having the I's dotted and T's crossed, as it were, is a good way to keep you out of trouble and those really hefty fines that could be imposed if you are actually prosecuted for that breach, right?
Well, consider, yes, it can be from $10,000 to $250,000 depending on size, but consider that it can start simply by an individual or a consumer complaining to either the federal or state agencies that their identity information was absconded with, and they believe it came from naming a doctor or business and the like. That's amazing. So especially if you're a small business, that might put you right under. So it's a good opportunity to make sure that your information is secure and also disposed of in a secure fashion. Confidential data destruction. Steve Sturgeon, located in the Valencia Industrial City
Center on Avenue Stanford. What's the address?
28042 Avenue Stanford.
Outstanding. Phone number?
257-9970-661, of course.
And of course, how long have you guys been around?
We've been around for 20 years.
Outstanding. So you know that it's all good as it goes. You know that your information will be properly disposed of. Steve Sturgeon, thank you so much for stopping by. All of it is a pleasure to talk to you.
George, thanks for having me.